All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. Today's going to be a real treat. With me is my secret weapon. We've been working together for a better part of a decade, maybe longer. He's been my secret copywriter. He's been helping me on not only just our own internal work, but together we've generated tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars, maybe even hundreds of millions at this point. And so he's one of our top coaches over here at Predictable Profits. And I wanted to have a discussion with you about copywriting in particular, and also the influence that AI has been having on copy. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to my good friend, our coach, our secret weapon, Tom Trush. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate you having me. This is a very timely conversation, for sure.
You and I, we're talking to 7-8-figure CEOs and their teams every day. And we've noticed somewhat of a disturbing trend that people are oftentimes rushing to create copy simply by throwing a prompt inside of a tool or just using the tool to do all the work for them, putting the copy out there, and then just kind of like checking the box and figuring it's done. But how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think that's society likes shortcuts. And it's very hard to resist shortcuts like that. And so you're right, we see it all the time, but hopefully through this conversation, we can change that mentality a little bit and give some tips to take that copy, or in some cases content, and I think that's something we have to clarify as well, copy or content with AI, that we can help enhance what they're doing with AI, because there are some finer, I guess, just some tweaks that you can make that you're going to get a much higher quality product out of AI just by making some minor tweaks.
I want to make sure our audience is real clear. We're not saying not to use AI. What we're actually going to say in the conclusion at the end of this is that you're going to see a hybrid use of both AI and human at the same time. Here's the difference. You could go to AI and have AI create a painting for you, and you could have a beautiful painting and put that on the wall, or you could actually have Monet do it for you. And obviously, the one that Monet creates is going to be far more valuable, right? And so the human needs to be able to have the context of experience in order to drive AI to get the results that they need and they want. And if we're going to just kind of go right in, 2 feet in, when I look at like writing copy, some of the ways that I like to do it is I'll use AI as a brainstorming partner. I'll feed it our super consumer and I'll work with it to help brainstorm different headlines, as an example. But it takes a human context to figure out almost which headline is going to be better and what questions to ask, and to push it and prod it and be like, you need to be more differentiated. Here's what our competitors are doing. The promise needs to be stronger. Highlight more of our unique advantage point. Be more specific in the results that you're generating. Call out the super consumer profile more. What are some of the ways that you use AI right now?
So I think the big challenge, I feel like, is a lot of people who use AI for copy, they immediately assume that what they're going to get from AI is going to be better than human. And at this point, there's still quite a ways to go. So one of the ways that I like to use AI is, first off, AI needs context. It doesn't have situational awareness. And so you have to feed it information before it's going to give you a quality output. And so a lot of times when I'm writing copy, I will feed it my own copy first. And one of my most common starting points is read the following and let me know when you're done. And I copy and paste my own copy in there and I have it read that. And then if I'm creating something that's similar, then I'll start going back and forth with prompts that really look to mimic what I've done in the past. But the big key is to give it some type of context, like some background information, some of the style of copy that you want, because you can tell it to write a certain style of copy. You can give examples, you can reference people, but it still has a hard time to really matching that. And so I find it works best if you feed it the exact type of copy that you want to use. And oftentimes it's going to be past stuff that you've done before. I think that's the easiest starting point, especially if you're using AI to maybe update previous copy or to create different versions, is to really start by feeding it your own stuff.
So, Tom, let's walk people through as if they're fairly new to AI, right? So let's kind of take step by step and let's kind of go from the beginning. So, your favorite, do you have Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini? Which is your favorite for copy?
I would say, I mean, I use ChatGPT the most, done
Okay.
some with Perplexity a little bit there, but I think probably with ChatGPT, going with the paid version is definitely, I suggest that.
So we use ChatGPT. Now you go to feed it copy. Can you recall the prompt that you used to feed a copy?
So I'll always start with read the following and let me know when you're done, because then I want to make sure that it reads it. Because sometimes what people will do is they'll put in links
Yep.
and ChatGPT will have trouble with links. It won't be able to read links, but you don't always know that. It won't always tell you that it's having difficulties with the links. And so just starting point, like I will give it some, or even if it's on a topic or a theme that I don't know, I will find something that I like and I will start with, simply read the following and let me know when you're done. And so
Okay.
that I can at least have a strong starting point so they know what the direction I'm looking to go.
Okay. So then it reads the copy and it replies back, done. And then
Yep.
what do you do from there?
It'll depend on the project. I'll tell you what I've started getting away from doing. It used to be, okay, I'm looking to create a similar email and here are my notes that I want to work in. And
Yep.
so then I'll just copy and paste some notes in. What I find though is increasingly, especially ChatGPT will spit out exaggerated versions of whatever you tell it that you want. So if you say you want an email, it's going to be a very exaggerated version of an email that follows oftentimes the same format. The same thing with like social media posts, LinkedIn posts, that kind of stuff. It'll be a very exaggerated version of that format. And so you have to go in understanding that if you tell it a specific piece of copy that you're working on, that you want a specific piece, that you're going to get something that, yes, it could be usable, but go in knowing you're going to have to make some pretty significant changes from a copy perspective. Now, it differs from a content perspective, but from a copy perspective, there's often a lot of changes. Because I mean, just like anything, AI is trained by, of course itself, it gets better, but then humans are also feeding it input. And from a copywriting perspective, the input that it's been fed up to this point, there's just a long ways to go because of the style, the formats that are used, the repeated patterns, the very long words, long sentences, all that stuff, if we're writing copy that we want to adjust. That's where I find where I've made changes as I continue to use it is I'm starting to test where I'm not telling AI exactly what I'm looking to create, because then it gives a more natural response rather than go with a more exaggerated response.
One of the ways that I've been able to support that even more is before I do anything, I'll look to create a write print so that the very first thing they do is they understand my tone, they understand what I'm looking for and what I'm not looking for. Here's what's acceptable, here's what's not acceptable. Because when you look at AI like an employee, like your most intelligent employee, as opposed to looking at AI as a technology, when you are giving instructions to an employee, you're going to say, here, this is what's really important. I want you to make sure you do this. I want you to make sure you do this. You got to put it in my tone. You're going to be ghostwriting for me, all this other fun stuff. But then, as you know, Tom, because you and I have gone through this, quite a few times, one of the worst things or the most frustrating things as a business owner is having to repeat yourself over and over and over again. So if you're writing 5 pieces a copy today and you have to repeat yourself over and over and over again, you're going to lose your mind. So making sure either that you have a repository of the prompts that you can just cut and paste, or if you're going to be writing for yourself, then you can go into custom instructions inside of ChatGPT. And so in custom instructions, you'll make sure that the write print is always going to be the same no matter what, every time you write copy. And this is me being a little bit of a geek because, just the way that my brain works, I'm always trying to find ways to be able to get the highest ROT, return on time, over and over again. When I have to do the same thing twice, I'm like, drives me nuts. So, that's one thing that you could do.
Yeah, and I feel like we're both doing something very similar here. We're just taking different approaches. You're giving prompts to make sure that it stays in your voice in each time. Whereas my starting point is I'm going to start by writing copy first before I even bring a ChatGPT or any AI into the mix, because I want to feed it what I'm already working on. And so another prompt that I'll use is continue on this, continue on the following. So I'll feed it. And then let's just say I get stuck. I don't know what I want to say. It is awesome as a brainstorming partner. If I'm drafting out copy and then I just get stuck, just paste it in there, continue on the following, and just see what comes up. Because likely there'll be 50% that's just like, no. But you just need that one point that it brings up that you didn't think about that makes it super valuable.
One of my favorite prompts, so when it comes to copy, after we're done writing it, is I'll have the prompt. So I'll enter my super consumer, so it knows our market. So it automatically knows. And so I'll say, please read and reflect on the email, for example, that you just wrote. Based on the super consumer profile, what are all the reasons that would stop someone from taking action? And then it would go ahead and it'll put all the reasons why somebody wouldn't take action. Like, brrr. And then I'll say, okay, based on your response, please go back and rewrite the email to address those complaints or to address those reasons. And then I'll go through and I'll rewrite the email. And then I'll say, okay, now read and reflect and go through the same thing. And I might actually have to go through that. The most was about 5 times, going through it 5 times, read until finally ChatGPT was like, I'm pretty certain there's nothing stopping this person at this point. But it's interesting. Sometimes I'll look at it and be like, I don't like it so much. Other times I'll look at it and be like, gosh, that was amazing. That was so brilliant.
Yeah. And again, I feel like it's a very similar approach or very similar outcome, just taking a different approach, because I'll take it and then I'll just bullet out notes on a separate document that I want to work into the mix. And oftentimes just work those in. Okay, can you rewrite this, but make sure that you work in these points. And oftentimes those points will come just from brainstorming on ChatGPT. But I think we're getting to the same outcome, doing it 2 different ways. And that's only just the 2 of us. So somebody else will get on this podcast and they're going to have a completely different way. I think the main takeaway here is to understand there's a lot of different ways you can get an outcome. You can use different approaches. And since we're set in such an infancy here with AI, this is just going to continue to evolve and change, and it'll get better and better. And then as a result, you'll figure out how to use it better and better.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, so if you think about AI and copy, you could look at it to help brainstorm different headlines. To Tom's point, you can give it an example and have it draft an email or improve an email. And this isn't about having it do all the work for you, because it's also important to understand that the best copywriters that I've ever worked with, including Tom, AI might do maybe 80% of the heavy lifting, maybe, but it's the 20% that is the real distinction between copy that convert and copy that doesn't. It's like Pareto's 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your efforts will create 80% of the results. It's that last 20%. So you almost, in many ways, you're an editor more than an author. But that's really, really important when you're able to take copy, brainstorm with it, push the boundaries, have it find out all the reasons why somebody wouldn't buy. You can have it come up with a list of FAQ, and it might come up with things that you haven't thought about before. It's always just about really trying to uncover those diamonds in the rough that maybe you didn't think of. I mean, you and I remember sometimes we would create copy, and especially for the really big projects we worked on, I mean, it might take us a month to get through the copy.
And it's a lot of back and forth. And now you have a tool that you can use for that back and forth, that it's just like adding another person into the mix. And I would argue it's more than just adding one more person into the mix, because you have, the brain power is so high that, it's just a matter of, okay, I need a different perspective. And I know I've got this tool that I can feed it and, okay, give me some of these perspectives. And just like, you talk about with like the super consumer prompts, like you can feed it and tell you, okay, this is my target audience. This is who I'm looking to reach. And where are the gaps? Where am I going wrong here? And you just feed it. And again, it just goes back to like, it's good. The quality of the output is, determined by the input. So if you're feeding it stuff that you feel like from a copy perspective is pretty good, then you should be able to get some pretty strong feedback and things that you may not have thought about.
Another fun way to use AI let's say sales emails. You're looking to create some sales follow-up emails and whatnot. You're not sure how to handle a situation. So you would bullet point, like Tom said, and then ask AI, please draft an email using my write print, but in the style of Chris Voss. And then, Chris Voss being the negotiator, right? The hostage negotiator. He'll write a really cool email. Or you can have different voices, different people. You could say, as if you were Steve Jobs, as if you were Elon Musk or whatever it might be, just to kind of get different perspectives, different angles. And one of those you may look at and be like, that's really damn good.
Sometimes I notice it has some challenges with certain people. I'll blatantly ask, let's just use Steve Jobs, and it's going to know who Steve Jobs is, but do you know who Steve Jobs is? And I've had it come back and say, no, I just thought that was just, you gave a random name to your target audience.
Oh, really?
So like there's times where you have to challenge it and say, do you really know who that is? The same thing with statistics. You have to be careful on the statistics because it has a tendency to combine statistics to create a statistics that match what you're looking for. So really look at those sources.
Or make it up.
Yeah, it will make it up too. And you'll notice, especially on ChatGPT, that when you ask for sources, it will show sources. Sometimes the links are clickable, sometimes they are not. And when they're not, that should be a red flag. Or copy paste, some of those statistics and just put it into Google and to do a search to see where it found it. And that's how you can see that there's oftentimes where it'll combine statistics to match what you're looking for. I think AI wants to please you, and especially with copy, you have to be careful with stats, that type of stuff. Make sure that they are legitimate because quite often they're not.
Here's another fun exercise too. So you could take 3 of your biggest competitors and take the homepage or the services page, pick whatever page you want, copy, either save it as a PDF or copy and paste that into a document, whatever it might be. Feed it inside of ChatGPT. And then again, feed it your super consumer profile. And then say, please read these 3 websites, include your own in there as well. And based on your best understanding of the super consumer profile, how would your super consumer rank the strengths and weaknesses of each of these competitors? And then you can go back and be like, which one are they most likely to choose to do business with and why? Which one are they least likely to do business with and why? And then what would need to happen for your company to become the obvious choice among these competitors? And then have it go into detail over and over and over again and really explore it. Next thing you know, you're going to get insights that are just boom, 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 boom. I mean, this happened to me. I was just playing around for fun on like a Sunday morning while I was just waiting for everybody to get ready. And then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, it's like, I couldn't wait to get back behind my computer. It was amazing.
So let's take that even a step further. So once you have that insight, we know in copy that stories sell.
Yeah.
But the reality is sometimes when you get a point, like there's a really strong point that you want to stress, very similar to what you're discussing, it can be tough to figure out a story around that point. So using AI to create a short story. So I'll often say something like, give me a story to help stress the following point, copy paste. And then it'll start spitting out different story. I'll say, okay, give me additional options. And so it helps trigger different things in your mind, but then ultimately you can get a framework for a story that, again, from a copy perspective, stories are super powerful, but it can be very difficult to come up with a story. So just how you just told me that story about it's a Sunday morning, you're just messing around, very easy for me to remember because I can picture you in that situation. We want to take that same situation and we now want to use AI to give us a story to help others remember some other point that we really want to stress in our copy. That's where it can be super effective and take those ideas even to that next level from a copy perspective.
One other thing too is I think the most dangerous part about AI is when it looks like AI, because AI copy, when you've read enough copy, like Tom has or I have, you can pick it up from a mile away. This has been written by AI. And the moment that happens, even if it's at a subconscious level, your credibility, trust, everything starts to go way, way down. So washing that AI stink off of the copy itself is critical for high converting copy. I've yet to see copy that was written exclusively by AI without washing it that's converted well.
Yes.
So it's really important that you wash it. So is this something that you do manually, or is this something that you use a tool for?
Yeah, the challenge with a lot of AI generated copy is that it's long. It will use $10 words when a 10-cent word will work much better. So the words can get very complicated. It will write in passive voice a lot. It will use the same format over and over and over again. That makes it very obvious that it's AI generated. I'll use AI in some cases because I like to use the prompt, condense the following by at least 50%. That'll then give me a shorter version, a more condensed version that gets a little bit closer to what I'm looking for. But I will manually go in and adjust sentences, adjust words, because again, if it's copy coming from me, it still needs to be in my style. And I think that's where people go wrong, is they will use AI. And let's say that they're using AI for social media content. Well, immediately, if you start posting AI generated content without washing off the AI stink, your readers are going to notice because it's completely different from what you used to do. So if it's now a 180 from what they're used to seeing, they're going to know. I mean, immediately red flags will go off. So you got to make sure manually you look at the copy and you adjust it so it matches what you've done in the past, or at least a style that's very similar. But I also like to use tools, as I said, ChatGPT with a prompt like condense the following by 50%. I love WordTune. WordTune is my favorite tool. Think of WordTune as a sort of like a thesaurus, like a boosted thesaurus, because it'll take sentences, phrases, words, and it will rewrite those, give you options. And so it's great for brainstorming. It just goes, it ties right into your email, Google Docs, all that stuff. And so that'll help get my mind going as well, is using a tool like that just to see different versions. Because if I read something from AI and I'm like, those words are a little too complicated, or that sentence is too long, give me some ideas on how I can condense or use shorter sentences. So it's a combination of manual and tools.
How does WordTune compare to Grammarly?
See, Grammarly will read things, I know, and because I don't use Grammarly, I prefer WordTune, but you can just put in a document into Grammarly and then it'll spit out, show you problems, within the entire document. I like WordTune because it allows you to really zero in on like specific sentences, specific phrases, one at a time. So it isn't reading a long piece at a time. And also you're using it while you're writing. Whereas Grammarly, you're putting in afterwards, or after you've at least created some copy, then we'll put it into Grammarly. WordTune, I like it because as you're working, you can see variations as you're working. It just makes the process for me a little bit easier. I think there's probably some people who would prefer Grammarly because then they're not getting interrupted. I prefer the interruption because there's times when I am writing copy and I just can't get from my brain to my fingertips down to the keyboard. And I know it's not right. And so I just, at that moment, I could sit there and labor over it, or I can just use WordTune to give me some options. And that's why I prefer WordTune.
And whether you use WordTune or use Grammarly or whatever that might be, I would highly encourage you to use a tool. And I'm speaking more to the listeners here, because we're getting to the point where the grammatical errors in sentences that just kind of go on and on and on, or too verbose or whatnot, that it becomes somewhat intolerable, depending on who your market is, because all the tools are there right now in order to make sure that you can write a good, clean email. That can really have a negative impact on your conversions as well. So I do recommend that everybody gets a tool. And coming from me, I mean, I've got multiple different forms of dyslexia and learning disabilities and the whole deal. 12, 14 years ago, whenever it was that Tom and I really started working together, Tom knows that I wouldn't send a single email ever without first having Tom take a look at it. He was like my high school English teacher. It would come back and it was destroyed, red all over the place. Tom didn't make me a better writer, but now it's made it a heck of a lot easier. You and I will still on occasion play this game of intellectual ping pong.
Yes.
Well, we'll serve copy into one another's court, and you'll rip it apart, and then I'll rip it apart, and then you rip it apart, and I rip it apart, until finally we're like, I think it's good.
Yeah. And that's healthy. I mean, like, you've got the phrase, you'll send me a Voxer message, I want to bit Charlie on this one, which is great. Like, I prefer that. Again, we talked about before, in copy, you always want to get additional eyeballs on your copy before you put it out. Usually you want to sleep on it overnight. AI allows you to do that. And, prior to AI, yeah. And I think we still go back and forth on copy. And even with AI, AI is an enhancer. It's not necessarily a replacement for the human intellect that comes with copy. So yeah, I think it's still beneficial, get additional eyes, but you will save time with some of the tools that come out. They're coming out with AI. And the great thing is, like we've talked about before, like Lavender for emails, especially like cold email outreach, it will identify issues in your emails that you're sending. And you start seeing those, you see those 4 or 5 times in a row, you're not going to make that mistake again. It gets ingrained. And that's where these tools become really helpful, is when you're making the same mistakes over and over again. Like, eventually it gets to the point, like, I'm not going to do that mistake again. It makes you a better writer.
The intellectual ping pong is all about bringing context, right? And even though AI can help bring that context, I look at it like, if you're a professional athlete, you'll sit there, let's say, when I was training in jiu-jitsu, I would have my coach tell me, hey, the issue is that you missed this and that. Okay. But then another black belt was watching me from a different angle. And he said, and then actually the way that your knee was positioned, blah, blah, blah. So he was able to give me another one that the coach wasn't able to find. And you could just kind of go back and forth. And that's why, you can have AI to have maybe that first round of intellectual ping pong, and then being able to go to somebody else and just begin almost like with a prompt. Tom and I are we know we can practically read each other's minds nowadays, but it's like, send it over to Tom and say, hey, here's your serve. And Tom's oftentimes looking at it through a lens of what would stop or prevent somebody from either reading this all the way through, or how is this differentiated enough from the competitors? What would stop somebody from making a purchase right now? Copy oftentimes is in the sales prevention, not sales creation department, sales prevention. People don't realize oftentimes they write copy, they're hoping it's converting, but you're inadvertently driving traffic to your competitor's website because you just didn't do a good enough job, or you confused them.
You bring up an incredible point that is so spot on, that with each person who sees your copy, they're bringing a different perspective. And that's where the value comes. Like, AI is going to bring a different perspective than when I write copy and I send it over to you, Charlie. Like, you're thinking something different. I'm thinking something different when you send me your copy. So it's those different perspectives that help make copy even better, because we can't just work in a silo and think that we know. I mean, we both admit we have been burned many, many times on copy that we think's going to work, and it doesn't work. It just gets crickets. It happens. And no matter how confident we are, it's going to keep happening, and will continue to happen. And that's okay. But just understand that you have the opportunity now to get additional perspectives with all the AI tools that are out there.
But to be fair, when you and I play a good game of intellectual ping pong, I can't recall an instance where we got crickets, because the more perspectives we bring up to it, the more robust the copy comes, because we begin to answer objections and address issues that we didn't see on our own in a silo.
Well, and this actually brings up a point that isn't related to AI, but is related to copy. So often people look at copy and they try to put everything into one message. Like, they put all their eggs in that one basket, not to sound too cliche, but they think they've got to work everything into one email, one sales letter, one video, VSL, whatever it is. And we are big believers that there has to be follow-up. And if you're going to do a campaign, it's not everything in one message. If it's email, oftentimes there could be 3, 4 emails. So you don't have to worry about trying to cram everything into that one email or that one sales letter. Just look at it. It's going to be a multi-touch, multi-channel. If you're not feeling like your copy is all that strong, you can make up for it with follow-up, with using multiple channels. There's so many different things that you can do now that enhance your copy. You just have to get away from thinking that you have to work everything into one message.
Absolutely. So we're pushing up against the clock here, so I'm going to have to wrap things up. But here's what I'll tell you. Tom's not only, again, I've said this over and over again, been a secret weapon for me, but the truth is he's also been a secret weapon for a number of the people within our board of directors program. Tom, every week, will either be reviewing a website or some copy or whatever that might be, making people that much better. Sales and leads, it shouldn't be hard if you have the right message market match. And that's one of Tom's many unique abilities. So if you're curious about what that would be like to work with Tom and I and the rest of the coaching team over at Predictable Profits in our board of directors program, make sure you check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. Sign up for a roadmap session, and then you get a chance to begin to experience what that might look like. So again, that's predictableprofits.com. Sign up for a coaching session. So that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. As always, Tom, it's an honor and a pleasure to be chatting with you. I've had so much fun. I got to tell you, man, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am right now. The whole team wouldn't be where they're at right now if it wasn't for you and just the way that you're continuously striving to just over deliver with a smile on your face. And we appreciate you. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that compliment so much. Thank you so much, Charlie.